weather is like the politicians. Hot one day, cold the next. You never know what you're getting, right? But I also bring you good luck. Coach Reno, we bring you all the best for you for the Big Red today for the important game. Last time I was in a Big Red game was in 2011 at Madison, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. Practically killed India in that game, and I got to see. I was given the award, Lifetime Achievement Award that year. So they took me to the football game. Then I went to meet the quarterback. Who do you think the quarterback was in 2011 in Wisconsin? Who was it?
Back from Seattle.
Right, the guy from Seattle, Russell Wilson. Right. So that was my last. So I think you probably would have the same luck today. How many of you think Steven Will would definitely win? I bet all of you, right? There is no dissent in that. Let me, like Melissa said, the reason I'm here is basically because of that one call, right? You and Rich and Barry made, which turned out to be very timely because as you can see in this, just a little outline I have, when I was very interested in STEM from the very beginning. If I didn't get 100% in math when I was in school, I was not a happy camper, So in 1968, when I got my doctorate from University of Wisconsin in Industrial and Systems Engineering, I wrote a book called, I got my doctorate, I got my wife for 50 years, who is sitting here. She wouldn't let me come along because, I wasn't feeling that great yesterday. So I wrote a book called Management by Systems, which is really looking at everything as a system. We are all systems people, essentially, because we all set goals and objectives. And we are saying, well, how can we bring all the resources, all the stakeholders, and bring all the resources together? And what are the resources available to us? Human resource, which is the most important. Financial, information, technology, physical, material, time. Time is a very important resource, Let me ask you a question. When you look at time as a resource, I was asking a group the other day, what's the one source which is both capitalist and socialist? Obviously, most people think they're mutually exclusive, right? If you're a capitalist, you can't be a socialist. Well, let me ask you, think about God. God is a capitalist and a socialist, right? God gives everybody 24 hours a day, irrespective of differences. But then God says, what you do with your 24 hours is going to decide how happy you're going to be, how healthy you're going to be, how wealthy you're going to be. So it's a capitalist concept. So when you apply the systems approach, to me, the basic, I would probably attribute most of my success, whatever I have achieved, to the systems thinking. Set goals and objectives and bring the stakeholders together and see how you can use resources better to create an implementation plan and implement it. That's exactly what we're doing here. So then in '93, when I was traveling with my family and I were traveling with President Clinton to the inaugural events because he had selected our son Raja to represent the young Americans at the inauguration. He was 18, he was youngest university valedictorian, the youngest money manager in the Wall Street, and he also happened to be there as All-American in tennis. So the president was asking me, he had seen a CBS 60-minute show about the tennis academy I used to own before that, where we helped create 3 world champions in tennis, Andre Agassi, Monica Seles, and Jim Courier. And he was also aware of my work with Prime Minister Gandhi in India to help create India's vision for, in the 1980s, he called me up and wanted me to help him to see when he becomes Prime Minister what he should do to create a vision for India. That's when we created the IT vision, information technology vision for India. So the president was asking me, what are you going to do next? I said, well, I just sold the academy, gave my money to the foundation. So to train 1 million more kids, because I always believed that people who make money do have a moral and ethical obligation to help those who don't, because I could have been in their shoes, the same thing. So we started the National Education Foundation, became operational in 1993 with the goal of training 1 million students by 2010, obviously. But then the question was, I realized I can't do it by brick and mortar, right? It'll take more than my lifetime. So I called up Dr. Moore, founder of Intel, who invented the computer chips and changed everybody's life. I said, Gordon, I want to train 1 million people. There's no way I can do it by brick and mortar. Do you think I can use the internet? And he thought for a minute, and he said, well, internet is going to be used for everything. So that's when I created the cyber learning, I coined the word cyber learning, and decided to do online learning, and that's what we did. So by 2007, we actually achieved our goal of 1 million students 3 years ahead of time by 2007. And then I expanded to STEM. Initially we were doing math and technology. So we went into STEM. Then in 2011, we expanded into what is called STEM Plus. Because STEM, science, technology, engineering, math alone is not sufficient. Because we can't read, we can't do science, right? So we said, okay, we have to add English language arts, social studies, SAT, ACT, IT, business and management. So that's when I made a partnership agreement with SUNY, State University of New York, because I realized you need a really top institution to implement the program and also bring more credibility to the program. And also I signed a long-term agreement with Pearson. Pearson is kind of the gold standard in individualized learning in K-12 STEM, and also signed an agreement with Skillsoft, which is the global leader in IT, business, and desktop and soft skills. A lot of the people's teachers, for example, need more soft skills. And then early this year, I was thinking to myself, I've talked to a number of people, educators, and there was a study early this year which said that 85% of parents want STEM education for their students, for their kids, and yet most schools can't afford it because it's expensive. At the same time, I was talking to some of the industrial leaders in the business, and they said that it's very hard to find STEM educated workforce. It's very hard. And then when I put those two things together, I said, well, why can't we expand the STEM, K-12 STEM, to the community as a whole? That's why I came up with this concept of C-STEM, Community STEM Program. So that's where, so at the same time, when I got the call, this was the thought going through my mind. And I said, wow, they're rich. And Melinda seems so passionate about it. To me, passion is so important. In fact, one of the chapters in my book called Happy Executive.org, which Melinda probably read, I have a chapter on 7 P's for success. Purpose. You have to have a purpose in everything you do. You have to have a pathway to get there. You have to have, the passion, which is like the fuel for the rocket. If you don't have the fuel, you can't fly the rocket. Passion, patience, perseverance, and then positivity. You have to, and principles. You have to have certain principles. So when I kind of felt their passion, I said, wow, this is the place to go. And also when I looked at the location, it was great. You're bordering 3 states, right? So I decided then at that time that this is where probably we can pioneer this concept of community STEM. So what we did is we said, okay, we'll give you all the resources you need. But you have to have a really good director, and you have to have people who are passionate about implementing it. It's kind of a national program. So when Melinda and Rich really went to bat for it, we said, okay, we will do everything we can. That's how this project came about. And what we are aiming to do here is really that every K through 8 student should be able to advance one grade level in a subject in 20 to 30 learning hours. That means that if a fourth grader or fifth grader is a grade level behind, if you put them on the system, whether in the classroom, during class hours, or after class hours, or at home, they can also access at home. If they spend 6 hours a week, in 4 weeks, they'll catch up with the rest of the class, instead of being left behind. So I would think that this program would significantly improve the graduation rate and the attendance rate, because students get more excited. And in order to make sure the program works, see again, I looked at learning as a system. And when you look at learning as a system, what's happening is that you're taking admitted students who have met some eligibility requirements and putting them through the system so they come out as graduates, right, with the skills. Now, in order to achieve that transformation, we created a system called PSL MMTP. P means personalized learning opportunity for everyone. S means stipend for the directors. It's a performance-based stipend. Tony and his team at State University would evaluate every week and provide them with a green, red, or yellow. If they get a green, means green light. It means the yellow means they have to have a conversation with them right away. And if it is red, means Tony might even send somebody over there to make sure that the whole idea is that being proactive instead of waiting for problems and trying to solve them. And then L means the learning management system, which allows everyone, from the superintendent down to the teachers, to see how each student is doing in real time. And M means mentoring and motivation. Motivation is very critical. In fact, people ask me, how did I help develop 3 world champions in tennis? I said, the one-word answer, motivation. That's probably knows that in football. I mean, motivation is pretty much everything. How do you motivate these kids day in and day out? And in fact, one of the things Melinda and I discussed, which I was going to announce today, was that we are going to give you an additional grant for students when you work with your school foundation to see how we can keep these students come to the class every day and go to college. So we would probably come up with some ideas about how do we keep them. One of the ideas is this readable, which Shanna talked about, which helps them when they come every day, they can see where they are and they can see how they can progress. But then the other thing is, based on the attendance rate and performance, they would get a certain kind of reward at the end of the year so that they can go to the next year and next year, so we can get these kids, motivate these kids to stay in school and get there. And of course, the biggest motivation is when you look at STEM, is that, see, an average student with STEM graduate from college ends up making $2 million more than a high school graduate. Now that should be motivation enough, right, for most people to pursue STEM. So STEM is very critical, and from a national standpoint, STEM is very critical because only 4% of the graduates in the U.S. get a degree in STEM. Now in Asia, it is 20%. So you can see the gap, increasing. And for us to maintain the global leadership in technology and in other areas, obviously we have to work much harder. And that's why I think that this community STEM idea might be a good solution, because it obviously would reduce the cost of STEM education for the whole community. And I estimated that we could probably save billions of dollars, because all these piecemeal solutions are not really, they spend a lot of money, but they may not be as productive. So we have a real opportunity here at student level to really create a national model which can then be replicated in all the other communities.